Good evening. I'm political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged. And as lawmakers continue to work on a budget, they continue to send a raft of bills to the governor. And here to talk about those, Mr. Ducey has supported, and what he expects is next is Deputy Chief of Staff for Communications, Daniel Scarpinato. Thanks a lot for being here. And I want to start by talking about the big topic this year so far with education is the ESA. Now, this is a voucher program that allows parents to take public dollars and use that money to pay to send them to private parochial schools out there. Now, supporters of this say it's important. It gives parents a lot more choice of where they can send their kids, find the schools that fit their needs. But critics of this say it's really taking money away from public schools and ultimately is going to kill the public school system.
That's, you know, Dennis, we've had this program, as you know, now for several years in Arizona, targeted towards a few groups: disabled students, children of military families. This is an expansion of that, and it was brought forward in an amendment form by Senator Bob Worsley. Senator Bob Worsley is not known for bringing forward extreme ideas. Sure. He is a consensus person. He brings both sides together. He's widely respected, and he really did that here, where he took the initial bill and he took some of the concerns that people had and he made it better. And the governor himself wasn't sold on the policy initially, but when he saw the amendments and he actually was able to get some changes in there for low-income students specifically, he really felt like this was a policy that would help give parents more options. So the governor sees this as something where parents can now choose. It's capped. There's not, at most, there'll be less than 3% of Arizona students who would even participate. So it really isn't, as some people have said, that it really negatively impacts public schools. We don't see that. We see it as something that gives people another option of where to send their kids.
But I think the big concern for critics of this is that it now all 1 million students here, K-12 students in Arizona, are now eligible for this program. I know it's going to be capped at some level, but those caps can be blown up at any time. And a lot of people feel like if you start doing that, that is going to end up draining big money away from the public school system.
Well, the governor thinks these caps are important so we can actually see how the program works. And what I would say to those critics is we're also putting a lot of new money into public education. I mean, I might agree with them if we weren't doing that, but what we're seeing is per pupil spending going up, spending across the board going up for the first time in a long time. 10 years, the state is investing significant resources in our public schools. So I really think there's a lot of misinformation out there around this. We think we can do both. We think we can expand school choice and also make public schools better.
Okay, talk to me about the constituency out there. Was there a demand for this? Because most kids, I think almost 90% of all school kids, K-12 kids here in Arizona, attend public schools. I mean, was there a demand and outcry for this expansion of this small program?
What I think is that it is a small program, and I think there's always an interest in parental choice. I think there's always parents and families out there that want more options for their kids. You know what I have found really startling about this debate is how the Democrats have gone to the extreme on this. They're now against any form of school choice whatsoever based on their comments. I think that they would repeal open enrollment if they could and trap kids in the school that might be failing in their neighborhood. School choice has been a huge benefit for Arizona public schools. Families have so many more options within the public school system. This is an extension of that, and I think, frankly, they have gone to such extreme. This used to be an issue that wasn't partisan. Even Barack Obama supported school choice. Elizabeth Warren once talked about the value of programs like this, but I really think the Arizona Democrats have gone to the extreme.
Well, speaking of Democrats, now last week we had David Garcia on the show. Now, he's the guy that wants to replace your boss as governor. He had formally announced a couple of weeks ago. I want to play a little bit of what he had to say on the show last week. Get your reaction.
Sure.
I didn't hear Arizona parents asking about that. I didn't hear Arizona parents congratulating the governor. I did see that a high-profile tweet came from Betsy DeVos, however. And what we need is somebody who's going to look out for Arizona's best interest, for the interest of our students and our families going forward.
Now, obviously, some politics going on there, but just get your reaction to what he had to say. He says he's been out there, he's been involved in education, and he's not hearing the outcry.
Well, then he shouldn't be concerned about the program, because that means we'll never hit the caps. I mean, his whole point is that this is going to hurt public education, but in the next breath he says nobody wants the program, so why would they use it? So I really think this is hyperbole. I mean, the fact of the matter is this will be a targeted program. There's a lot of safeguards in here. There's actually more money for low-income students. So we think this is a very common sense approach, a very reasonable approach. And again, Senator Bob Worsley doesn't bring forward extreme ideas. This really was a consensus and a much different bill than the one that was originally
One
introduced.
of the things that this was sold as it going to be a net savings for the state budget. It was going to save $2 to $3 million.
That's correct.
But now there is some concerns about that. Some other analysts have looked at that and said that those JLBC numbers, the Joint Legislative Budget Committee that initially put that out, says they may not have considered every factor in this, and that price tag actually may be going up right now.
Well, I find this so amusing because when the JLBC put out the report on the initial bill and said it would cost the state money, the same people you're talking about held that up and said, hey, this will cost the state money. Anyone who questioned that was attacked, and now they're attacking the report on the new amended bill, which was specifically amended so that it didn't cost the state money, and in fact there's a small savings over the years. So I think that they need to get their story straight.
Okay, now let's move on to another big education issue here, teacher pay raises. Now initially when the governor rolled out his budget, he was proposing for the first year it was a 0.4% pay raise for next year. There was a 2% raise phased in over a number of years. Since then, now the number has gone up to about a 1.5%, maybe to 2% raise is what the legislature is looking at right now. Where's the governor on this? Is he supportive of that, or is he going to go for more?
Well, the governor's in support of as much of a raise we can do for teachers as possible. And he really wanted to draw attention to this in his State of the State and his budget in collaboration with the legislature. It looks like we're going to be able to do an even larger amount than what we announced in the State of the State. And I also just want to note, this is a rare thing for the state to do, to actually do a line item where we're saying we're going to specify money for teacher raises. That usually happens at the district level. So this is on top of fully funding inflation, which hopefully will result in teacher raises, Prop 123, which has resulted in teacher raises, and a bunch of other policies we're doing that total over $100 million that we think can also go towards teacher raises. So I think you're going to see a much more accelerated, larger raise than we thought was initially possible, but now it looks like we're really going to be able to do something that is even more impactful. That's a really positive thing from the governor's standpoint, but we hope that school districts also put additional dollars that we're giving them into teacher raises in addition to that. So I think you could see over the next couple of years several percentage pay increases.
And also another issue here that we're kind of breaking this late this week. Tim Hogan, attorney, is getting ready to file a lawsuit against the state for improperly funding construction and maintenance of schools. They estimate over $1 billion worth of maintenance has gone unfunded since 2008.
Yeah.
Is the governor prepared to deal with this?
Well, we'll take a look at what they file on Monday. We want to take a detailed look at it, see what their arguments are. I mean, look, our focus now is on this budget. It has new dollars for K-12. It has a lot of new money for capital and construction. Now, it may not be as much as what they're demanding in the lawsuit, but we think we can really make a positive move on school capital and construction in this budget. But as you've pointed out just in these questions, there are so many needs. I mean, teacher salaries is a big need and something the governor really cares about. Full-day kindergarten in our low-income schools, something we really care about. So you have to balance all these priorities.
Sure, I understand that, but when it comes to construction and maintenance, we saw at the beginning of the school year last fall, we saw a couple of schools in Glendale that were shut down because they were structurally unsafe, shut down in the middle of the school year for a period of time.
Right.
Yet the governor's only proposed $17 million for new school construction and maintenance in this budget.
Well, we're going to do as much as we can, and we're working with the legislature right now. We want to get as many dollars in general to K-12. If we can do more for capital and construction, we will. It's important. I think all of these issues are important. I think if you talk to parents, the biggest thing we hear is around teacher salaries, teacher recruitment.
And you were saying there are a lot of needs out there with pay raises and construction and all that. What about Diane Douglas, Superintendent Diane Douglas's proposal out there to extend and expand Proposition 301? This is a 0.6% sales tax that goes to education. She was proposing to extend that to expand that to a full 1%. She believes it can get an extra $400 million that could be used for an 11% pay raise as well as more school maintenance and construction.
Well, that would be a very substantial tax increase. You know, look, the governor is on record supporting the extension of 301, which was passed almost 20 years ago. It's a sales tax. If we can extend that, we think that's positive, but we really want to do it when it can pass. What would be a disaster is if 301 went to the ballot, you didn't have the right coalition and you didn't have the right timing, the right resources. I mean, one thing we saw from Prop 123 is these things are difficult to pass, they're complicated, so we need to make sure we're going at the right time. We tend to think that 2020, when more people are voting, is a better time to go.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit too about the governor's efforts to try to, and the state's efforts to try to get more teachers into the classroom. We know that there's a shortage of teachers right now. One of those bills that is out there, lowering the standards, I suppose, for teachers, letting people with career experience to get into the classroom. Where's the governor at on this bill?
Well, we don't, I would take issue with saying we're lowering the standards. What we're doing is changing this process. We're giving principals the power to bring on quality individuals to teach. We want to update this process so that if somebody is a high quality person who has content knowledge, who's a professional, and they want to go contribute something in a classroom, and a principal thinks there's value in hiring them and training them, we want to give that principal the tools to do that. So we think this would really help. We think there needs to be a lot of reform around teacher certification, which is so outdated.
Yeah, and I know we're running out of time in this segment here, but isn't that kind of like different skill sets? Just because somebody's like, say, a successful lawyer, a successful engineer, successful in anything else, doesn't translate into good skills when managing a classroom of kids.
You're right, but we also know that the best determiner of a school is its principal, and we trust quality principals to make these hiring decisions rather than state government.
All right, hold on. We're going to have to take a quick break here, but we got lots more to come here on Politics Unplugged with Daniel Scarpinato. Sticking around with more with that. And as Congress continues to look at ways to repeal and replace Obamacare, we'll ask how Arizona is getting ready for whatever changes may come. And still ahead, the man seeking to replace Diane Douglas as schools chief will weigh in on her plan for teacher raises. That and more on what he thinks Arizona schools need to succeed here on Politics Unplugged.
Where's your primary residence? Where's your primary residence?
It's a simple question, one this Arizona lawmaker refused to answer.
Can you get your hands off of me, please?
No. We went looking for answers, and what we uncovered could be costing you. Thursday at 9:43, only on 3TV. The Forecasters, April, Royal, and Kim, only on 3TV.
Diamonds, the jewelry exchange, has 3/4 carat certified diamonds, $11.90, 1 carat, $18.90, 2 carat, $59.90, plus thousands of GIA diamonds, guaranteed the lowest price. Hundreds of designer rings set while you watch. Buy direct, the Jewelry Exchange Phoenix.
Working with our buyers, salespeople, customer service, and warehouse guys on a daily basis and sharing in their successes, that's why I work at AFW. I spend as much time as I can with my salespeople every single day. I try to give them all the tools so that they can be successful with a customer and build that relationship. Customers come back time and time again to AFW, not just for the low prices, but because we go that extra mile. We don't have high-pressure salespeople making them feel uncomfortable. We make buying furniture fun. I'm Justin Schroeder, and I'm an AFW store manager.
This is all that was left from my accident. And that wasn't even the worst part. Whew, the pain in my neck and back was gnarly.
Nobody plans to be in an accident, but unfortunately they happen. If you're suffering in pain, call Emergency Chiropractic. They will treat you with no deductibles, no copays, and no out-of-pocket costs.
And now, I feel great.
Emergency Chiropractic, the kind of care you want today.
Buckle up.
I need you to help me pick out a vacuum for Mother's Day.
I don't think Mom wants a new vacuum. She wants and needs new flooring.
Call Express Flooring today for fast, free in-home shopping and just in time for Mother's Day. Buy with no interest till 2019 and save up to 71% off all in-stock flooring, including pet and stain-resistant flooring.
Dad, Give her the best Mother's Day ever and call Express Flooring right now.
Express Flooring is the best. Call 800-EXPRESS.
Diamonds, the Jewelry Exchange, has half-carat solitaires $4.99, 3/4 carat $6.99, 1 carat $9.90, and 2 carat $19.90. GIA Diamonds guaranteed the lowest price, plus 1 carat studs just $5.99. The Jewelry Exchange, Phoenix.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. Daniel Scarpinato, Deputy Chief of Staff for Communication with Governor Ducey, stays with us and, of course, is not all about education. There are plenty of other things down here at the legislature to talk about as well. And I want to start with something that really the state doesn't have a lot of direct control over that. And that's we're talking about lawmakers in Washington are still trying to come up with a plan to repeal and replace Obamacare. Now, part of that would include turning Medicaid funding into block grants that ultimately could leave the state on the hook for costs as they go up. Now, what is the governor planning to do if that happens?
Well, the governor's been really involved in these discussions since the beginning of the year. He's been committed to what he's ran on, which is Obamacare needs to go. But it needs to be done in a smart way. And so what he really wants to ensure is that we're not pulling the rug out from under people, and that people who currently have insurance, you know, one of the issues with Obamacare was that a lot of people were promised things and lost their health care. We want to make sure that doesn't happen in this transition, so we need to be thoughtful. We've been talking to the congressional delegation and others since the beginning of the year. We're talking about people's lives here, so we really have to be thoughtful. I think this latest bill, we're taking a look at it, seeing how it impacts the state. I think we're in favor of what they call a per capita cap rather than a block grant. But really what we want is more options for states and governors so that they can determine how to structure their Medicaid program. We've long had an issue with the federal government making mandates around Medicaid where we can't tailor it towards Arizona's unique population. So we're hopeful that if we transitioned out of Obamacare, that the governors would have more flexibility there.
All right, I was also kind of interested, too. I know that last week President Trump had signed some executive orders taking away some protections of national monuments, and included in that as part of like the Grand Canyon and whatnot. What is the governor's view on this?
Well, I think they're looking at reviewing some of these, and that's within the president's realm, and certainly in some cases it may be worthwhile to take a look at some of these. Obviously, the Grand Canyon is a huge asset to Arizona, and we wouldn't want to see anything that diminished the Grand Canyon's protection and beauty in our state.
All right. Now, also signed last week, a lot of people paying attention to this. The governor signed the teen texting bill. This would ban teenagers that are just getting their license on a learner's permit or for the first 6 months of their license from using really any kind of electronic handheld device while they're driving out there. You know, there's been some criticism out there, particularly from Democrats like Steve Farley out there, that says this bill doesn't go far enough.
Well, you know, it goes further than we had before. So I think some of this is partisan politics. But the fact
the legislature?
I know, it's shocking, right? The fact is this is a good reform, and the governor supported it. It's common sense. In fact, in his signing letter, he said he would be willing to go further, and for minors, not just people 6 months after their learner's permit, but all minors to do this. I mean, I think the idea here is that the law can be a teacher for our youth. They're the next generation of drivers, and this is a great way to help encourage safety on our roads.
He also mentioned his own experience as a father in this. Explain a little bit about that, maybe.
Well, he has 3 sons, and he's had to teach his kids to drive, and I think he understands the responsibilities of teens and of parents, and if this can help guide our youth in the right direction, I think he sees that as a really positive step.
Okay, and also, you know, the governor campaigned, as you well know, on cutting taxes every year that he was in office. Where are we at with that this year?
Taxes?
Yes.
Well, he proposed a very small tax cut in his budget. We've really been responsible with how we've approached this issue. We've wanted to do things that are common sense, that are good reforms, and that keep our budget balanced. What we don't want to do is do something that would result in our budget not being balanced.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this segment, and thanks for stopping by. We've got lots more here to talk about on Politics Unplugged. Just ahead, We'll hear from one candidate who says it's time for a new schools chief, what he says our students need to succeed. Just ahead.
Every single client that is calling us is looking for help and understanding of the process. And we're there to have that listening ear and to give them some direction and then to aggressively fight for them when that time comes.
977-1900. That's me, Windfall Willie, the old prospector miner. You might be saying, where you been, Willie? Out searching for exciting new games, new fun ways to play, and new ways to strike it rich. And for my return as Chief Fun Officer of the Arizona Lottery, I'm going big. Meet the all-new $30 Ultimate Million Scratchers ticket. With 4 top prizes of $3.5 million, it's the first of its kind in Arizona. I see you, Derek.
Ready? We don't want to be late. Baby's name is Stephen Wright. It's Stephen with the PH. The address is 531 Sage Street. That's just next to City Hall. Where are my keys? My glasses? Wait, how are you doing this? Focus Factor.
Focus Factor has been clinically shown to improve memory, concentration, and focus. It improves verbal learning and short-term memory by 44%. So get your Einstein on.
Wow, Dad's on it too.
Focus Factor. Feed your Einstein.
Some things are simply impossible to ignore. The strikingly designed Lexus NX Turbo and Hybrid. Experience the SUV that dares to go beyond utility.
Lease the 2017 NX Turbo for $319 a month for 36 months.
Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
I'm all about freedom, so I love this new offer from Cox. I'm free from constant buffering with crazy fast internet. Sorry, instinct. Plus, you get Contour TV, a free HD receiver, and free Pro install. Plus, the most freedomy part, no contract. So switch to Cox and let freedom reign. Or is it ring? Oh, shoot, I should know this.
Get up to 50 meg internet, Contour TV, and digital phone for $89.99 a month with no contract. Ask about adding your favorite Latino channels at no additional cost.
The insurance company's looking out for their own interests as well as those interests of their insured. So you should definitely have somebody that knows the business, that's willing to take on the big bully insurance companies and protect your interests and your rights.
Call 977-1900.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. And with us right now is the man who'd like to replace Diane Douglas as the Superintendent of Public Instruction here in Arizona. And that is Frank Riggs, a former congressman from California. Welcome to the show. Now, the last time I saw you, you were running for governor back in 2014. What's changed? Why are you running for superintendent?
Well, I've spent a lifetime working in education at just about every level, Dennis, from local school board president to the United States Congress, where I chaired the House Subcommittee on Early Childhood, Elementary and Secondary Education. And after leaving Congress to keep my term limits commitment, I started and built from the ground up the largest national nonprofit organization, a community development financial institution devoted to helping charter schools that educate primarily low-income student populations with their facility financing and development needs. So I've, again, spent almost a lifetime in education, and I am passionate about making sure every child has access to a high-quality education, no matter where they live, no matter their socioeconomic circumstances or family background.
Now, a lot of people watching this right now in the school system is going to want to know a lot more about where the guy stands who's going to be running the schools.
RiggsForAZ.com.
Yeah. Now, where are you specifically? You heard us talk a little bit earlier about the voucher program and the expansion from the governor. Where are you on that? Do you think expanding that even more, blowing the caps, putting more people in this program, is this a good idea?
Well, I've worked long and hard to promote more competition and choice in public education. I think parents should be empowered to choose the best education, the best educational model in schooling that they deem is appropriate for their child. My advice on the expansion of ESAs in Arizona was to limit it to low-income parents. Parents whose students qualify for the federal lunch program. All too often, those parents, those students have fewer educational options. A lot of times those kids have to attend schools that have been historically underperforming, and so my proposal is to limit the expansion of ESAs to those low-income families.
Okay, that would be going back and taking this voucher expansion backward then, because as of right now, every kid in Arizona is now eligible for this voucher program. Am I clear on that? Did you like to roll that back?
You're clear. I wasn't able, I'm not superintendent yet, and I wasn't able to get up to the legislature and advocate on behalf of those policies, but I really think that's the appropriate next step.
Okay. Another big issue out there, teacher pay raises.
Yes.
And this is really goes beyond just them wanting more money. It comes down to a teaching shortage right now. As of right now, it's a little over 2,000 vacant teaching positions now throughout the state of Arizona.
You're talking to a certified substitute teacher who taught 7th grade history last week.
Well, so. I can see you as being a tough teacher, by the way.
By the way, I think my 6 years in Congress qualifies me to teach American government and history.
And civics, maybe.
On a par, perhaps with someone who spent that same equivalent time period, 6 years, getting a teaching credential.
Sure. And so, this goes to that. I mean, the teacher pay out there, I mean, we've seen reports from the Morrison Institute at ASU that said when you adjust for cost of living, Arizona, worst teacher pay in the country.
Right.
Therefore, you're having trouble recruiting new teachers here.
Yes,
How can you, as Superintendent of Public Instruction, affect change to, get more teachers here and retain them?
Sure. Dennis, I want to do two things. One is I want to spearhead a statewide effort to reimagine our school finance system. To work towards a more equitable system, whether it's a public district or public charter school, whether it's a rural school or metropolitan school, whether it's a non-state aid district with higher property values or a state aid district with lower property values, that is. And that is with the goal of moving our teacher compensation to the national average. We're dead last now, or very close to the bottom. And secondly, concurrently with that, I want to move us towards reaching the national average in terms of dollars into the classroom. As you probably know, State Auditor General found that in 2015, we're at 53 cents of every dollar actually going into classroom instruction, that is to say, classroom teaching and learning. It's the lowest level in the 16 years that they've tracked that. So I want to increase teacher compensation and dollars to the classroom.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about then the woman you'd like to replace, Republican Diane Douglas. Now, recently she just rolled out a new plan out there, and that would expand and extend Proposition 301 passed back in 2000 by the voters. Now, this is a 0.6% sales tax that goes towards education. She'd like to expand that to a full percent and expand that into perpetuity out there. Now, she unveiled this plan here recently, and I want you to take a listen to what she had to say and get your reaction on the other side.
Sure.
I'm open to hearing from Arizona citizens, but we have 3 times around the state, we've overwhelmingly heard pay our teachers better. So that's why I think my guarantee to them needs to be, if we're going to have an increase in the tax, voter approved, that we are going to promise them this time that's where it's going to go.
Now, she also says that by expanding that tax and extending that tax, she's going to be able to raise $400 million a year for education, most of which could go towards an 11% immediate pay raise for teachers.
Right. She threw out that idea, by the way, in 2015, and it went nowhere. It was basically a non-starter, as you know. I worked very hard as a co-chairman and spokesman for Prop 123, which narrowly passed, as you know, last year. She was nowhere to be seen in that campaign. But on to the point of 301, I favor its extension. I don't want to increase it and make it permanently. As you know, sales taxes are regressive. They impact low and fixed income people disproportionately. Many of them are senior citizens. And frankly, K-12 education ought to be primarily funded through income and property taxes. That's why I say I want to spearhead that effort to reimagine how we're financing our schools and work towards, again, better compensating our teachers. After all, we need to give them the respect they deserve and the autonomy to manage their classrooms, the autonomy that they crave. And I want to work very hard on getting more dollars into the classroom.
Okay, now how do you get more dollars into the classroom from where it's at right now? And I believe we'd only have about 15 seconds left.
I don't want to see a whole bunch of new programs. My advice, what I'd like to do is partnering with the governor and the legislature is make teacher compensation the priority rather than try to spread a lot of money across a lot of different initiatives. Let's make teacher compensation, dollars to the classroom, our top priorities, improve education in Arizona.
All right, thanks a lot, but that is all the time we have tonight. But be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged.